And have a full house.
Hey, how are you doing?
At the end of the
Good
day.
to see you.
I was. Honestly, I didn't. Yesterday. So I.
So I read to see, was it you that was sick?
I want to hear that.
Somebody was sick, so they can't.
Unless I'm just.
And that way. I tend to teach classes.
That's what I wanted to say. Probably. Fair enough, yeah, thank you.
Why we wrote up together.
Be recorded. With it. Public record. Last time we don't record.
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hi, Bob.
Oh, I had this. You got a bridge over there.
Doesn't help.
All right.
Around my son's Christmas tree.
Very true. How are you?
No, I think I read it a lot. Wait, give me that.
I know, why are the odds?
Indoor walking.
I actually looked this up online.
How are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It falls really here. You might not be able to bring this week. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot colder. What's the idea? He's gonna ask you what you delegate.
Does everybody have the revised agenda? Okay. I just worried I should circulate it just to make sure.
You got every hour.
There was something in here I read about. It's supposed to be proportionate to the population. That's just mentioning like 20, right? Sure. Portion over representation.
Addressed as only, or is it a possibility?
It must be taken into consideration.
Everybody I'm talking to.
What am I supposed to say?
Here is a secret in there.
You're part of the conversation.
Right here would be fun.
Tell you how bad I feel. You go to Australia and all the big people show up. And we'd have to read out things.
Yeah.
It was disappointing.
I have.
Particularly where I was.
Yeah.
We got,
Tiffany.
back in this town of, 200 people, 6.5 hours from any place up in Allocated.
Okay.
For 4 days.
All right.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey,
How are you?
Sorry.
You avoided me?
Yeah, how are you?
Good, how are you?
That's you a long time. Tiffany's here.
Yeah, he's nicer than I am.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. Please stay out of trouble.
I'll try to.
You kidding me? You don't need any more.
I still gotta work like 6 hours tonight.
Here, Randy.
A couple cousins on Allen.
Couple seats here.
This renovation on top of the center, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, we got one left. We haven't sold. We got two. Three sold.
Dan's gonna be here tonight, but
It's coming around. It's definitely slow here. It's definitely, the interest rates are definitely playing a little bit of a factor.
looks like we have to revise our stock.
Yeah.
Good stop. We'll be more. They're finishing work on the ground. They're not getting any work. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Like in the annex.
It looked like a hostile takeover.
Yeah. He's trying to do a little bit of.
I don't know what happened to your agenda.
Yeah, let me know when I should give you
Charlie. You're gonna see here.
Ran out of food. The pub actually ran out, there was one pub in town, that ran out of food. But they had a spare alcohol stash at church. I always put my spare alcohol. No one ever looks there.
That's pretty hard up, Richard. You had to get into the communion wine?
Yeah, so he wasn't concerned I ran out of food. He was hoping they didn't run out of alcohol, but the church had it, so.
My wife wanted to go opal mining, so we went to this town called White Cliffs, which is a town of 200 people. 6.5 hours from the closest other town, which is even smaller than that. And while we were there, they had flash floods in the mountains and we got flooded in. So we got stuck there for 3.5 days. We were there for a day, and, town of 200, and all you did was sit in the pub with all the locals in town. It's like, no, all went really well. And they ran out of food, they ran out of fuel. And they still didn't open the roads when we left, but the guy that controlled the roads, he said, I can't tell you can do this, but if I was gonna leave, try to catch the flight you're gonna miss if you don't go, I would leave at 7:30 tonight and just drive relatively slowly so you don't hit the black cows, because all the cows in Australia are black. And they like to lay in the road for warmth at night, so.
Okay.
Was that near Cooper Pedy?
No, it's about 12 hours west-east of that. The distances are just so huge, it's unbelievable.
West-east is a very confusing direction.
East, we also were on the West Coast. We spent a week and a half with an exchange student we had here 5 years ago from Mildura, which she describes it as the Wenatchee of Australia. It's the fruit belt. It's inland on the Murray River, and then we flew to the West Coast and went to the wedding of one of our exchange students from 12 years ago. And she's sort of part of the family, so we went for her wedding, and that was out in the wheat belt in Western Australia. Nice. So we spent a lot of time in rural parts of Australia that people don't normally go. It was fascinating.
You get to know it better that way.
Yeah, it was great. We've been there about 6 years ago in big cities, and this time.
Those are big signatures.
Yeah.
Should we start talking?
Yeah. It was pretty cool, wasn't it?
Most like, have you been there?
Yeah. They got cows there.
Brown.
The
Well,
part
good
the part that's
afternoon.
crazy about Australia is just the
Thank you.
distances just blow your mind. I mean, flying from Sydney to Perth, which is, across Australia, is 6 hours. It's further across Australia than it's across the United States.
It's like 2 hours. This is 14 plus hours.
Well, we flew through Singapore, so it was 21 for us. But it was 1,000, well, more than that, it was $3,000 cheaper to fly to Singapore than it was to fly direct.
Wow.
Come up from LA.
That's 16 hours. That's
Yeah.
Right.
And then you probably have signed the third one.
Okay. So good afternoon, as clerk of the board of the San Diego Public Transportation Benefit Area. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 3:04 p.m. and welcome everyone to today's special meeting called by the Board of Directors to review the current structure of the PTBA board as allowed by RCW 36.57A.055. Today, we do have 12 of the 15 multi-jurisdictional members attending, and I thank you for your participation. If I could have you guys introduce yourselves and the municipality you represent, we can start there.
Frank Kuhn, City Wenatchee.
Rob Kidd, City Councilman, East Wenatchee.
Jerry Lee Crawford, East Wenatchee Mayor.
Randy Agnew, Mayor of the Metropolis of Rock Island.
Jen Sutton, Douglas County.
Mark Strong, Douglas County. Jim Fletcher, City Cashmere.
Bob Getty, City Shore.
Clay Bradford, City of Ania.
Kyle Steinberg, Douglas County.
Tiffany Gearing, Chelan County.
Bob Unger, Chelan County.
Jill Thompson, Town of Waterville. And we do have legal counsel present.
Erin McCool, legal counsel for Link.
Yeah, she's
I'm right here.
Hi.
Hi, Mayor.
At this point, I'll actually turn it over to legal counsel as she will clarify the purpose of the meeting.
So the purpose of the meeting is Link has called for a special meeting for the component cities and counties to review the composition of the board. This is controlled by statute. And I think the clerk already told us the statute 3657A.055. Each of the component cities and counties can send representatives to this meeting, and the majority of the people that show up constitutes a quorum. So the quorum for today's meeting is 7. And I'm going to turn it over to you to discuss how you want the composition of the board to work. Currently, under the bylaws, each of the counties has 2 representatives on the board, and each of the component cities has 1 representative on the board, for a total number of 12 members of the board. Okay. By statute, you can have up to 15 members of the board. So today you can consider whether you want to expand the board to those 15 positions, or whether you want to change the composition of the current 12, or some combination of that. It's really up to you as the elected representatives or the designees to determine what the board of Link looks like. The statute very clearly states that the Link board serves at the pleasure of the component cities and counties. So this is your opportunity to discuss any changes that you feel are appropriate, and you can take the vote on that today. That will direct Link to amend their bylaws to reflect those changes. I will counsel you that you should consult with your own legal counsel for each of your component cities or counties. I cannot provide you separate legal advice. I also have to be very careful because I have some conflicts regarding that. So I cannot provide you any legal advice about how you should determine the composition of the cities and counties. But I'm here to guide you through the process, which should not be a conflict unless there's some objection during the meeting.
Just as a point of context, this requirement that we look at the composition of the board at least every 4 years, is a provision that's in state law specifically for a couple of transit agencies that had more jurisdictions than there were seats available to do. So if you look at Snohomish County, there are, I think, 21 incorporated communities in Snohomish County, so they can't each have a seat on the board of community transit. Similarly with Clark County Transit, there's more incorporated communities than there are potential board seats in Pierce County as well. So the legislature said, so that a community is not forever not considered as a participant in a PTBA they're part of, you have to look at this every number of years to decide what the composition of the board is. At Link, we've always had every jurisdiction serving on this board because we've been able to fit them within the numbers. What has changed in the last 4 years is the legislature changed the maximum size of the board from 12 to 15. And so they do allow you to have 3 more members than we've had in the past, which could allow for a different mix of how you do representation. Then the other issue was about, at the time the legislature added the non-voting union participant on the board, they also specifically ask that jurisdictions consider population basis as part of how the board is constructed. They only mandated that for counties that have more than 400,000 population.
Right. And to follow up with what Richard said, this meeting is out of cycle, but it was called it was directed to be called by the board. And so that's why we're here. That appears consistent with the statutory scheme and the law. So we took a legal review of that, and it doesn't seem to be problematic to call it outside of the cycle.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and take a read on it. I was made aware by Councilmember Kulas and Councilmember Tidd about, and from Richard about the idea that the board could go from 12 to 15 under state law. And that the bylaws committee was going to be meeting on some other issues. And I thought this would be a good time to at least sort of have a discussion about whether or not going from 12 to 15 made sense, and whether or not, at least from the city of Wenatchee's perspective, and I think to some degree from the city of East Wenatchee's perspective, no offense to our small cities in Chelan and Douglas County, but for Randy Agnew and the city of Wenatchee to have the same vote when I've got 35,000 people and you've got 2,000 people, and I've got 40% of the bus stops and 35% of the all that math, it just didn't seem to make a. Seemed like this might be the right time to have that discussion to see if there was a way to make at least the urban area have more of a say where most of the bus routes are going, and so that was the reason I brought it up, is the bylaws committee was going to meet anyhow, and so I said let's just have that discussion. I didn't realize it would create this board to meet again in this fashion. But I just wanted you to know, just sort of looking at, we're 35,000 folks here, and seems to me like, and I look at other boards I sit on, or the city, we're on the board of Rivercom, we're one of 5 voting members, and we have about 25% of the calls. Seems to make about sense. Transportation is a little bit different because you've got ports on the board, and you've got washed out on the board, and so it's like, it seems to get allocated, so I don't know. But this was one that I just think, based on the number of bus miles and everything that seems to be happening, at least a lot of it in Wenatchee, and I think to some degree East Wenatchee, I just felt like it was the right time to at least have that discussion.
So Aaron, point of clarity, with respect to those that are going to be voting today, it's my understanding that this was encompassing the legislative body of the counties, which would mean all 3 county commissioners. Am I wrong in that interpretation?
Well, so it's the benefit areas are created by the members of the county legislative authority and the elected representatives for each city. The component meeting, where you review the component structure of the board, can be at a meeting of the designated representatives of the component cities and counties. So it's really up to each component city or county to determine who they send to the meeting. There is no restriction in the statute regarding the number of representatives you can send. So long as it's the representative designated by the elected legislative body for the county or the elected representative.
So what I'm hearing you say is one single vote per jurisdiction.
We've
Um,
always operated with all three of the county commissioners being at this meeting,
Okay,
as
I
that's
wanted
what was
to make
required
sure
to
that-
establish, and at least one representative from the cities. We've never had more than one
Okay.
voting. So it's always been the 6 county commissioners and each of the 8 communities were the voting at this meeting. That's since the time we first started.
So it's in keeping with procedural.
Yeah, But I think what Aaron's saying is it doesn't have to be all 6. It could be less if you choose to do that. But you're entitled to have your entire legislative body here.
And
Noted.
basically, the quorum that's set today for voting, it's the people that show up that are the designated representatives of their component city or county. You are the voting members for this meeting. And so it's the majority of the folks here, and there are 12 folks here, so the majority would be 7.
So how do we, I guess I'm confused. So each of the 2 counties have 2 voting members.
That's the board of Lake. That's not for this board.
Right, okay, and then, but for here, they get 3 from each if they were all here. So they would get 6 and I would get 1. If I brought 7 council members in me, do I get 8? Just asking the question.
I have a comment. You know, I've been on this board since 98 or something, or maybe earlier. I do not ever remember a conflict between any city in here. We've always had super representation in our staffing. I come and give the appropriate thing. We all understand that the staff knows what's going on. I don't remember a conflict relevant to voting between one city or next on any situation that came up.
I just like, can you answer the question? If I brought 7 council members and myself, do I get 8 votes or do I get 1 vote?
Well, I will counsel you to check with your own counsel. As I read the statute, and I can share the language with you, that the members of the county legislative authority and the elected representative of each city shall review the composition of the governing body.
So you interpret that to be- Okay,
The review shall be at a meeting of the designated representatives of the component county and city. So each county and city needed to designate the representatives that they wanted to attend this meeting. We had the opportunity to do so, and these are the people.
but you understand my question. So 3 and 3 and I get 1, or do they each get 1 or do they get 2? Because as Richard pointed out, this isn't the board of directors of Link.
Right,
This is a different board.
right.
And you would interpret that to be 3 from each of the 2 counties and 1 from the cities.
Yeah, I would interpret it to be the members of the county legislative authority, which would be any of the commissioners.
Right.
Okay, and the elected representative of each city, which generally means the mayor of those cities.
My council members are not elected.
Potentially a council member. But the statute says elected representative, not representatives.
Got it. Okay.
And this is, that structure is consistent with how it's been done in the other counties, including where there's been controversies.
I do believe in a general sense that does kind of balance the overall aspect of this particular board when you look at all unincorporated areas and then all the remainder of the seats that are housed by specific cities and or towns. Yeah, maybe that's what they were thinking when they designed it that way, but it does seem to balance the unincorporated versus incorporated, both for whatever that is worth.
But I will share, there's not a lot of guidance on this issue. There have not been any cases that discuss it. Very limited attorney general opinions. The attorney general opinions are mainly concentrated on who gets to vote and who doesn't get to vote. So there's not a lot of guidance out there. I will submit to you that the statute is not entirely unambiguous as it's written. And that's why I do have to be a little bit careful. I represent Link here, and so I'm here to guide the process. Each of the counties and cities has their own legal counsel that they can consult with, and in some instances, we may need to evaluate some conflict issues.
I've been on this board for almost 7 years, and just wanted to, what Bob brought up, it was on my list. I don't recall any conflict between City of Wenatchee or any complaint by City of Wenatchee about the service they're getting as part of Link, or any other member of the board for that matter.
Yeah, but there's more than just service, right? There's the service element, there's the tax revenue element that some's getting implemented, some hasn't been implemented. It's lots of decisions that are made by the Link board that maybe some of the, if we had more city representation might be different. And so I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying at some point when you look and say, would the city council have voted for pay increases in excess of what this board did in order to keep drivers so that we could keep routes going? Again, that's a very urban issue, right?
It
And
affects all of us the same.
yeah, it affects me 30% more than it affects you, but on the same token, it's some of, so it's more than just sort of the service part. It is, would the city look at those things differently? And should they have more say in those answers, yes or no? And right now I've got 1 out of 12 votes. And I'm sort of thinking that's the way that's going to go. But at the end of the day, I think if you would have had 3 council members on this board, we all would have voted for those pay increases, for enacting the second tax, getting the routes going the way we attempted to try to do that with the voter approval. And not everyone would have done that. And so it's not just about, right, is the service okay or the bus? I mean, there's more to this, to governing this, to allocating its resources, right? And not that I disagree with anything that Bob would do or you would do, but again, is 1 out of 12 appropriate for the largest city in the region? And that's the reason we're here having that discussion, right? And I get 1 out of 12 votes, and I'm guessing it's not going to probably go 100% the way I think it should, but at the end of the day, that's my point, right?
Mayor Crawford.
I see what you're saying, Randy. You're kind of assuming like the statement of it's not broken, why fix it kind of a thing. I think that's a perfect time to look at something. I mean, if you're embroiled in a controversy and there's heated debate and a lot of disagreements, it's really hard to do anything successfully. So I think at a time where even when things are moving smoothly, it's okay to just go, gosh, maybe in the future there would be, and is this fair and set up the way that our counties and our cities are actually represented by service and population. So yeah, the model of if it's not broken, don't fix it, but we could always get ahead of the game too, is my thoughts.
Commissioner Sutton.
So, this is an interesting conversation to have, and I agree. I've never seen an issue. I've seen quite a bit of cooperation, reasonable discussion, et cetera, amongst the people that participate on the board. I have a concern about any entity. Right now, it would be the city of Wenatchee, but it could be any entity that would have potential influence over project expenditures within their own community, and the extraordinary influence that more members would have to take those funds and potentially direct them to projects within their city limits as opposed to evenly dispersed amongst the rest of the communities.
And so having 3 votes out of 15 gives us some undue influence when you get the same.
Well, then 1 vote won't matter if it's not giving any undue influence.
No, again, all I'm asking for is a third. I'm not asking to have 60% of the board or 50% of the board. I'm asking to have my representation based on population and use of the system, right? That's what I'm asking for. I don't get control. I'm not asking for 7 of 13 or 9 of 15. I'm asking for somewhere around a third. That's my ask. Yeah.
Any other comments? Yes, Bob.
Yeah, well, I guess I've only got the year experience, so I don't have the experience that Mayor Getty Mayor Agnew have related to this, but it seems to me that our role as county commissioners, we really look at everybody in our county, regardless of it's within it, unincorporated or within the city. And I think if there's anything that we provide is that broad brush approach. So I don't think there's any real problem then with having large representation of the county, because indeed we represent a greater number of constituents and we represent them all the way across. I don't anticipate, or have I seen anything in conjunction with what you two have said there as far as any conflict, or I don't see any potential for conflict. And so it is something that if there really is a compelling reason, Mayor Kuntz, to proceed, I would like to hear more, other than the fact that, you know, you feel that you're underrepresented.
Yeah, that's my entire, if you think that Rock Island and Wenatchee have the same or Entiat, no offense to my friends at Entiat, but if you think that we're the same, then your board's perfect.
Have you seen a situation, or can you share with us a situation where you feel like you have not, your
Yeah, I
voice
just
has
mentioned
not
3
been
or 4,
represented?
just earlier today. I just mentioned them earlier where some of the votes on whether it was giving salary increases to bus drivers, whether it's deciding not to take the additional 1/10 that the law allows you to take, that the voters voted for in order to expand service in the urban areas, to add Sunday services, to be able to hire additional drivers that the voters asked for, and this board turned them down. That's 2. And again, I'm not here to tell you that even if there was 3 city council members, that would have passed, right? I
Yes.
can't tell you that it would or wouldn't have. But again, I could look at those and say, if the city had more control, would we have done that differently?
Yeah.
And I would say probably yes with some of those things. Again, I don't micromanage, you know, Mark Kulas is on our board. I don't micromanage any decision he's ever made here. And never would, right? That's not the goal, but I look at those situations and I say, I think I would have voted differently. I don't know if council members would have voted differently. I want to make sure that the board members that sit on this board believe in Link, believe in its mission, believe in all the things that it's doing that's great for our community. And I want them to participate. And sometimes I think there are members of this board who don't believe in what it's doing. That's just personal opinion, right? I want everyone in here to be engaged. And so, yeah, I think there are some issues that do come up from time to time. And what I don't want to have happen, and Richard can tell you stories, I mean, there's stories of transportation districts just like this, suing the hell out of each other, not having boards, and even in the Seattle area, right? These things have been messes from time to time. You told me stories about where, again, just board composition made things super messy. And so I think there are sometimes, Bob, when that does happen. And those that have been on the Transportation Council with me have heard me say this 200 times, right? Mansfield is different than downtown Wenatchee by 800 miles. It just is, right? And this is an urban-based service. Now, again, it does go to these other places. I get it, and it's moving folks, but most of this happens right here in either my city or Mayor Crawford's city. And Bob, that's my reason for wanting to do this. And it may not be just those, it could be other votes coming in the future on things, right? But I would never, again, I'm asking for somewhere near a third, right? I'm not asking for a majority, right?
Commissioner Straw.
So a couple of comments. I think, one, I'd like to think, and I do believe that each one of us that are elected and sit on this board take our position very seriously, doing the deep dive into the financials. I know I do. It's something that I take very seriously. I believe in public transportation. I believe in the mission, but to suggest that that we don't have a responsibility to take a look. For example, if we would have taken the second 10th, I would hate to be explaining to the taxpayers right now why we can't deliver. We're having trouble delivering, what, 4% out of 20%? I wouldn't want to be explaining that to our taxpayers right now. So having not taken the second 10th, I think was a good decision, given the challenges that we've run up against. And then if we're talking about population being the driving factor, unincorporated Douglas County within the benefit district, I think would probably warrant 3 representatives. So I don't know that that is necessarily.
Can you do the math? I'm trying to figure out the 2 counties, total population, so 1.5, I don't even know.
About 123.
So anyhow, those are my initial thoughts. I agree with the concept that it's not broken, don't fix it. I do respect Mayor Crawford's perspective on sometimes it's healthy to take a look, which I think we're doing right now. But from my perspective, I think that I think the composition is okay, is working just fine.
I would also point out on the 1%, sorry, jump ahead of you there. It's not that we didn't take it or not going to take it ever. Yeah, and we postponed it because they didn't have the buses to even be able to do it. So I don't think.
Listen, I'm not here to argue any specific decision. I'm just telling you that I think that we may have looked at those differently, and it might have been a 8-4 vote, right? Or a who knows what would be, right? I'm not saying that we would overturn any decisions that you made. The issue gets to, again, should we have the same equal participation as Antioch and as some of the other smaller cities and the counties to some degree, right? And that's my only point. Yeah.
You made the comment that this is an urban bus service, but I believe our transportation district is all of Douglas and
Oh,
Chelan.
listen, it absolutely is, but percentage of buses, percentage of bus stops, miles, I can go 800 different ways of describing way more that is happening in Wenatchee and East Wenatchee than happening any other place in the benefit district.
And we are reasonably balanced. We are 60% urban, 40% rural in terms of service. Population is about 65%, 35% rural, but then the rural routes all come into different areas. So in fact, the way the system operates, the rural routes operate, you can get off and on in urban areas. So in fact, that's what our transit study showed, was that we're about balanced for the way the population lays out overall. So I think that's, it's all true. It just kind of plays out that way, but a good 60% of the service is within the boundaries of Wenatchee, East Wenatchee.
So we've been doing well.
Yes.
I don't really want to semantically get into the argument of the composition of the board, but I do fundamentally believe that the larger the board gets, the less efficient and effective you are. There is some point where you have to have some level of an equal representation of your constituencies, but I believe the bigger you get, the less effective you are as a board. I think 12 is already a pretty large board.
What if it went down by 2?
What if we were
Instead
to
of going
reduce it?
up? Reduce it so there's one commissioner from each county. Still proportionately.
I'm not sure legislatively that you can do that.
You absolutely can. And I mean, and some of these disputed ones we've had, Mason County, no commissioners and no city council members serve on the board of the PTDA. They have a hospital director, they have a fire chief, and they have a school district member. They have to be an elected official in the county. That's the only statutory requirement of the board of elected. And that was because they couldn't agree between the city and the county. So they just said, none of us are going to serve, and they put other people on. In Clark County, they used to have 3 commissioners, they now have 2. So they've gone different ways in different places based on the issues they have. The requirement is that we have a board of at least 3, no more than 15, and it's up to you to decide.
I think it would still be I'm so sorry, Dan, you were before me.
Well, I was just going to say that there's a certain elegance and equality to having a small city have the same vote as the large city. I like it. It's kind of the Samson and Goliath type thing where the small city gets the same respect and the same vote that a larger city does.
Okay. Thank you, I'm online. Okay, bye-bye.
Might want to mute that.
So for the record, that's the 14th voting member, so the quorum would be 8.
Mayor Crawford.
Well, I was just gonna state if we went down instead of going up, I think proportionately, it's still to the point that Mayor Kuntz is making, still disproportionate, but a little bit more balanced. Not completely the way he's suggesting, but slightly to maybe make up partway the difference, so. Just a thought. And if an even number is a complication, then maybe it's adding one more community member. I mean, if there's,
It has to be elected.
it has to be an elected official. Maybe it's a port where the port represents both of our jurisdictions, right? I mean, we have a regional port authority that looks out for all of us. So maybe it's a rep from that world. Just a thought, to make it odd, because it's, for not having tied votes.
Mayor Fletcher.
Bob was up first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Just a quick procedural question. Who else do we have on remote here? I didn't realize there were additional people.
We only have Councilmember Joyce Huber online that can speak as a panelist.
Okay.
We do have other viewers of the public.
Okay, really. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so we do have this streaming as a webinar, so members of the public can watch what's happening. You won't see them on the list. And just as a word of caution, I have to say that with this new system, it's very sensitive and picks up all conversations. So whatever you're saying is being broadcast. So
Got a live mic.
Please go ahead, Mayor Fletcher.
Okay, well, just, listening to the conversation and composition of this board, I would like to say, I hope of a small city that we're trying to look at from a policy level, which is the board's job, being somewhat dispassionate, not having to have a local politic issue, but also looking at what's the greater cause of the organization as a whole. Yes, Wenatchee has the population, all the traffic, but as a outsider, I have vested interest in traffic, but as an organization as a whole in its delivery of the entire service, not just what happens in Kashmir or what goes up to Lake Chelan, what's to the benefit of a whole organization. So I see this board has done a very good job of trying to do that, maybe not perfect in all cases, but trying to make decisions as to what works for an organization. I don't see any reason to change the numbers at this point in time.
Yes.
I'm relatively new as well, so I don't have the kind of institutional knowledge that some of you have. I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I don't love the idea of a 15-member board. It is difficult sometimes with the 12 we have, Right here.
What are you trying to say, Tim?
Nothing. But I do believe that it's important to look at process. And I don't think there has to be a conflict or an issue to reevaluate. And I think it's healthy to do that and to have these conversations. So I would be much more inclined to stay at the 12. I understand the ask, considering the population. That seems to make sense to me. But Richard, I'm wondering, you've been in transit forever. Have you seen this, a board makeup representative of populations and the incorporated cities?
it's in Washington State. It was not done that way until the legislature changed the rules 8 years ago. So the large counties now have population-based jurisdictions. Pierce County and Clark County both had to go to population base, Spokane, had to change their board by 1 seat to make that happen. So we do have it in those 3 counties, and King County has always been a different animal, but those, the population base issue has driven how things are done. Community transit, Snohomish County, there's no big city that drives that number there. The cities are, other than Everett, are pretty close together, and Everett's not that much bigger than some of the other cities, so they all just keep one vote, and that seems to work, and that actually meets the legal requirement for population basis up there. The rural counties that don't have the 400,000, none have chosen to go to population base. They all have to consider it, but none have done it. There are disputes out there. And Franklin Transit, which is also has a 12-member board, is actively debating their board composition currently because there's a dispute over sales tax. One of the counties wants to reduce their sales tax, and so they're trying to get in there, and they're trying to change their vote population. That's happening today in Franklin, so in the Richland area. And like I said, Mason County went from 6 members to 3. They eliminated their cities and counties off of their board and just went that other direction. So I mean, it's a real mix in the state. Big boards are not uncommon. The MTA board in Los Angeles had 26 members. My board at Access, I had 66 members, which was sort of insane. Denver has 26 members. WMATA in Washington, DC has 33. I mean, so large boards are not uncommon in large urban areas. And I think, if I were looking around the country, I would say average is probably in the 9 to 12 range. Transit boards tend to be bigger than most other governments that I've seen. So it's a real mix of what's out there. I think the Washington state rules, which require all the members to be elected, is a little different. About half the state's boards are actually citizens appointed by elected officials. That's not allowed in Washington. The only community that does is the Olympia area. They actually got legislation to allow 2 citizens, non-elected officials to serve on that board. So like I said, it's not, there's no easy, even pattern of what works. And from a technical advice standpoint, this board has been incredibly effective and incredibly positive and be part of for 20 years. I really have not seen a lot of serious conflicts. There are some, but there's always policy issues. But it's been usually respectful and works well. And I really don't have any heartburn with the structure, but it is a conversation that we're supposed to have. It got raised again. I said, well, this is the process to do it. And we need to do this every 4 years legally. Now, this has been 3 since the last time we had this conversation. But nevertheless, that it is that process. And I think it is a fair question to ask, what is the right balance and what is the right place to go? But to a great degree is what you want it to be. There's not a lot of best practice, if you will, because it's all over the board.
Councilmember Huber, do you have a comment?
Well, I just think I should weigh in on the conversation. I can appreciate Mayor Kuntz's position, but having been on the council for a number of years, the board of this of Link, I would be not in favor of increasing the number. I agree with Kyle that to be much larger than what 12 is large enough. I would not like to see it get any larger. And I have to say that since I've been on the board, we have always felt, I've always felt that we have done very fair in whenever we're discussing equity, outside of population, of making sure that Link is beneficial to who we represent as an entire system and not trying to keep it and not giving, added weight simply based on population. Thank you.
Oh, please go ahead, Mayor Crawford.
So if population isn't a factor and not something you would that some of you would want to base this board around, then what would the argument be for having 2 county commissioners from each side? And I guess that's a question towards the county commissioner. So if it's not population focused, why would we have 2 county commissioners from each side?
I'd like to take a stab right off the bat. I could see the logic of that, Mayor Crawford. I agree that having a board that gets too large just gets more cumbersome and not as agile. It is our standard practice, I would assume it's the same in Douglas County, that the representative of a board goes back to the fellow commissioners to discuss each issue in detail, to make sure that we are in agreement, consensus to proceed, and we could go from there. I could see the advantage of that. But again, I see that this appears to be functioning well. I don't see any indication whatsoever of dysfunction related to allocation of resources at all.
Chelan County, is there, do you guys have a, or sorry, Douglas County on that?
So my response would be, Mayor, that one, I think it's already been mentioned, but as elected county commissioners, we have the responsibility not only of unincorporated, but we look at the entirety of Douglas County and the citizens within Douglas County. And I try to do that each and every day in my job as a elected commissioner. I take that perspective. And then I guess secondly would be what I stated before. I don't believe that what we have, the structure we have currently and have had for a number of years is broken, nor do I believe that it is. If I truly felt that there was, if it wasn't functioning well, then I would I would honestly have an entirely different perspective on it. I don't believe that it has, and I don't believe that I guess I'm looking at what problem are we trying to fix? And like I said, I think it's a healthy exercise to take a look at, which we're doing. I assume that's the reason why we do this every 4 years. I just don't believe it's broken. So I guess that's my best perspective on it.
Mayor Getty.
Well, it's usually about money. And my concern is it disproportionate that the smaller cities get a bigger percentage of the services than Wenatchee and East Wenatchee do? I mean, it seems pretty obvious to me that the massive amount of services are related in the 2 bigger cities. So what else do they want if they're already getting their percentage dollar-wise and service-wise over the representation, whether they do or don't have it? What is the percentage of funding spent outside of those 2 cities on mass transit? Is it
I'd have to look
50-50?
at some budget numbers, but in terms of service, what our study that we had independently done 6 months ago, were 60% of our service was defined as urban, 40% was defined as rural. That's about the population split. Ridership tends to be about 65% urban, about 35% rural. So we actually have a bit more service in the rural area. Well, you know, percentage more service in the rural areas than the ridership justifies, if you would argue that. But rural service doesn't generate the kind of ridership that you get in urban areas. So, you know, I don't have any allocation question with the allocation of services. I think the board has considered that, and this is where we've been for pretty close to all 20 years I've been here. These numbers haven't shifted much in that period. Maybe a bit more urban than it used to be, but not much. And I think that sort of works for where we're at.
Commissioner Hoover, I believe you're probably next.
Okay, could be Commissioner Sutton is ahead of me, but I'd like to just.
I'll let you find out between the 2 of you.
Are you good?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, this has been a very productive discussion. I think it really was a great exchange of ideas. I think we've heard from the great bulk of people that there is a comfort in what we've got now, that it is functioning well, and that with that in mind, I put forth the motion that we retain the current composition.
I'd second that motion. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I think there's still some further discussion. Commissioner Sutton.
So I sat on this board for what, 4 years, I guess it would be, from brand new green guy to leaving as board chair. During that time, we had a lot of very passionate conversations over specific items, over issues that came before the board. They were always well discussed, well vetted out. But the ultimate tell that the board was successful is when a vote was taken, it was respected and honored, regardless of the side of the issue that you were on. And that is a functioning board. That is a functioning board by any definition. This board is currently established as a functioning board. It serves well. Yeah, I personally would not be comfortable with changing it.
Mayor Van yet? You have a comment?
Council,
Council member. Okay,
That's
my
okay.
apologies.
but so I'm a rookie of rookies, so I'm fresh to the board, and I think all this insight's been very interesting. And I can empathize with Mayor Coons' concern with higher representation based on population. But at the same time, that waters down the board to a certain extent. It's not like a hostile takeover of the board, but it waters it down for the rural communities. And the one thing that we all, the common thread here is that we all represent our constituents, and the common thing with all the constituents, they're paying the same taxes. So I feel that the rural needs to have equal input into the board overall, because we represent the citizen.
Do we have any? Yes, yeah, you have.
Yeah, comment to the motion. So I, just heads up, I'll be voting no, but only in that I wish that if the board just went down by 2. Not that we were increasing it and having, adding more positions. So that will be the reason why I might vote. And this is the only topic maybe I get to say the reason why. So only because from what I'm hearing is it is working well, and population doesn't matter for the respective votes. So that's why. That's like, sounds like it's working well. And I hear that, but I also hear that population is not a factor. So then therefore it should just be 1 vote per area. That's all my thoughts.
Okay, so we have a, yes.
There needs to be an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, so do we have anyone from the public who would like to comment on this particular topic? Anyone online or
Are we taking public comment?
in person? Okay, great. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to,
Just as a point of clarification. So we're voting, 1 representative per city, since we have 2 from Waterville and 2 from Eastern Wenatchee, just one of you get to vote on this item.
I'm voting. Since I stated why I'm voting.
Yes.
I have to vote.
Yes, that's correct. So the motion on the floor is to maintain the status quo for the current Link Transit Board of 12. And we have a second. All those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand.
I'll raise my hand.
Wait. This is as current, correct?
Right.
This is to maintain the status quo. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Clerk of the board,
Motion carries.
motion carries. What was- I'm sorry,
With 10 yes. Or
10 yes
in favor for the motion.
and
4
4
yes.
not in favor. Okay,
Thanks, everybody. I gotta get to a 4 o'clock meeting,
okay,
something about state park too, so.
okay.
All right, thank you guys for. Thanks a lot.
Okay, we are adjourned from the special meeting officially at 3:52. Thank you, everyone.
You want to stay or for you move? Population.
No.
I want to leave. Can I leave?
If you make me stay.
He shouldn't sit so close. I think
It's too easy.
I was thinking of Randy.
Whoever has to be.
You threw the short stick. I have to see Bob way more.
I do.
No.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what change because all of these
I didn't want to
that are current. No, it's, I can't remember.
Well, yeah.
You just, you're right. Like, yes.
This year.
That sounds good. I'll take the one time. I get to rewrite it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so you guys have a meeting after this? Yeah. See if you voted it down, voted my way, one of you to go home. I'm just kidding.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Link Transit Board meeting. Today is October 18th. It's now 3:54, excuse me, 3:53. Let's just call it 3:53. So I'm now calling this into session. Clerk of the board, can you confirm if we have a quorum?
Quorum established with 10 members present.
Great, thank you very much. We allow the public to comment on any agenda, any items that are not on the agenda. If there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment, we please ask them to come up to the table, state their name and their address, and I ask that the comments be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone signed in for public comment?
At this moment.
Okay. We'll go right into the consent agenda. I believe that everyone received the revised agenda. There were a couple of items on the revised agenda that were not on the initial agenda that was sent out.
I'd like
Yes.
to make a clarification. We actually have 12 board members present.
12 board members. Okay.
One whole board.
Full board. So I think everyone here has had an opportunity to review the items on the consent agenda, comprised of the minutes of the September 20th, 2022 board meeting, minutes of the special meeting, state auditor exit interview, accounts payable and payroll vouchers from September 2022.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Discussion action items. Sam, it looks like you're first on the agenda to talk about RFP 2022-10 tires and related services.
Thank you. So Link Transit has been soliciting this service and contract since 1992. We request that the contract from RFP 2022-10 be awarded to the lowest responsive bidder, which is Commercial Tires. And that contract would be effective January 1st of 2023 through December 31st of 2025, with an option to extend for 1 year. Link Transit found all 3 of the bids competitively priced and close in cost. And the contract for 2023 has a 16.5% increase on product and 1.4% decrease on labor over the current 2022 contract. And $175,000 has been allocated for this contract for the 2023 vehicle maintenance budget. And were there any questions about this item?
Who's our current provider?
it would also be commercial tires right now.
There was actually a decrease.
Yes, 1.4% decrease on labor.
It's highly unusual.
I think that's the first time I've seen it.
They got better at changing the tires.
I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation for the award for the tire contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Nick, you're next.
Alrighty, so I'm gonna have Eric join us up here. So as you know, we went out for a request for qualifications for facility redesigns for operation maintenance base and also Columbia Station. The initial proposal came in from RH2. We had four different proposers. We interviewed two. We selected RH2. The proposal for the phase one, which was initial oversight design, was $150,000. Since then, Eric's come back and requested a little bit more money. So we'll let them go.
Sure. So when we first kind of were proposing on the project, I mean, I worked with some sub-consultants, architects to be on our team, and we hadn't fully flushed out what the final fees would look like. And so after we, had met with staff, we kind of determined here's the scope of what was desired. I went back to all the team members and had them give me their proposals and whatnot. And when it came back, it was more than what I had originally anticipated. So essentially where we're at right now is to try to get the scope where we think staff would like to go with it. That number is sits around $200,000, just under.
So
Randy.
Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
You spoke up first. You go, you go, dude.
So as I shared with Nick, this gives me just a little bit of uneasiness for two reasons. One, we went through a bid process, and to be fair to all those that responded to the bid, it would feel a bit clumsy to me to make an adjustment after that process. I understand that mistakes get made, I certainly do. But for me, it has a bit of an uncomfortable feel to it.
Sure.
And then I guess, yeah, I'll leave it at that. That's.
And I guess to respond to that, I wouldn't view this as a mistake. What the difference is that we didn't actually have all the data, if you will. We didn't, typically when we propose on projects as an engineer, it's all qualification based, right? So really what you're selecting is who you feel is the most qualified to do that work. And then at that point, you enter into that negotiations with that client and you determine what is the full scope of what you want to do, make sure everyone's on the same page, and then put a fee to that. And then hopefully you guys come to an agreement that, yep, those two align, and then you move forward. So when we proposed, it was certainly as a qualified team, this is what we're going to bring to the table. And I'll be honest, when I looked at those numbers, it was my best estimate. It wasn't, I didn't honestly look at that as like, here's my final end game number, because I didn't really know until we sat down and actually talked about what that scope should look like. And so that's how it got to be where it is.
Just for clarification, this was an RFQ, not an RFP.
Correct, absolutely.
And so I think it's supposed to be qualifications based anyway, and then now we're in the negotiations phase of the contracting.
I think that the key message we're asking is not to approve a contract, because that's not the point here. It's we've selected them under the qualifications process, but the estimates are coming in higher. We wanted the board to be fully aware and say, do we continue down this path at this higher level? Not that it's wrong or right, it's just that this is a new piece of data that you need to consider as to how we go forward.
Yeah, this is an action item. I would entertain.
Yeah, two others.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Since I'm new, if you could just humor me exactly the need for this redesign.
Well, there's a couple,
Purpose and intent.
right. So our facility was built in 1999. We moved in January 2000. So it's 22 years old currently. We actually have buses, available bus parking for 75 vehicles. We're actually ordering more buses than we actually have room to park. And then we also need more electrification to charge the electric buses. So that's one component of it. The other component is the staffing. We're out of room out there. We have rented a trailer for training. It has no restroom facilities, no water hookup at all out there, so you have to come inside. So we need a permanent training facility, more conference room, more office space for the future growth, for not for now, but for the next 20 years going forward. That's what we're looking at. So we have 2 additional acres at the north end of the property that we purchased, and we're looking at utilizing those for additional bus parking, maybe a new flow of traffic or flow of bus coming in, how they get washed, fueled. They have electric instead of fueling, so we may not need a fueling facility as much as we do now. So there's a look at the whole component where we have currently out here, the 3rd floor is planning, marketing, admin out here, and we'd like to try to get those together as an option. I mean, getting everybody in the same building would be very beneficial. That's a hope. Whether we can afford it or not, that's what we're wanting to do with RH2.
So kind of, yeah, to further on that, so the idea is we want to take a sort of a step back, take a new look at how things are functioning, where they function, where they should be functioning, and kind of look at the operations, the staffing, everything, put it all together and then try to figure out what makes the most sense to you. Do you refurbish your existing buildings? Do you start over? Anything right now is theoretically on the table. It's not unlike what the Chelan PUD did when they looked to go to their new service center out in Old Station. So it's a very similar team that's going to be, it would be a part of this group. It's actually the same architects and us on that. And so really what that looked at was, first of all, where should the PUD be located geographically? And so you start like kind of, you really step back and say, you look at that, and then you start pointing in on programming, what the space should look like, how big should it be, who should go where, all those sort of things came into play.
And to add, for historical purpose, since you're new, the staff all used to be together out of Old Station. It's just in the last few years, they ran out of space, so they expanded into here, which you still have communication, but not nearly the same as when you're all in the same building.
Okay.
So.
Thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Steinberg.
I get that this was a professional service contract and understand the negotiation after a specific firm has been contracted with. That being said, would the scope of work that change the overall evaluation of who you may have selected, being that you might have added work that maybe one firm was more qualified to handle or specialized in some added points of work that were discussed after the fact? Would that have changed the scoring mechanism that you utilized to select your contractor?
So I couldn't speak to the scorers because I was being scored, but what I would say is I think our approach was quite a bit different than some of the other, at least the other team was trying to go about this. So the reality is what we really want to do is sit back and sort of workshop this with the right people to come up with the plan. And so how we do that is really what we've kind of come down to for the final scoping. What the intent of and what we're trying to do has not changed since the original interview. So kind of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish it is intact. It's the actual, like, is there going to be 2 meetings, 3 meetings, 4? Like, those are the things that we're trying to figure out and make sure that we're getting the appropriate amount of scope for what is needed for.
Well, I guess what I was asking, if you were evaluating professional services to come and evaluate the overall, let's say, campus of Lincoln, and maybe you said one of the things was electrification, maybe we added more electrification that was originally proposed to be reviewed, and maybe one particular contractor who wasn't selected has more experience in that particular avenue than the one that was, but that wasn't a very large component, so maybe they didn't get as preferential score. I'm just asking if when you're looking at the full context of the evaluation of the process, would it have changed the outcome of the result, having a larger area of evaluation for specific applicants?
Let's say I'd have to kind of default back to the folks that were scoring. I don't know.
As one of the scorers, I was, as Mark said, this made me feel rather uncomfortable that we're changing an amount after the fact, seemingly. But as it was pointed out, this was for qualifications, and the amount was not the main criteria.
I'm not talking about the amount.
I know, hold on, I'm getting there. But after discussion and thinking about it, it wouldn't have changed my vote, my recommendation at all. That's That's my opinion.
So Kyle,
Certain people are more qualified in certain areas.
Right.
Professional services, and if the scope of the professional service you're asking to be, have a responsive applicant look at changes, then you gotta evaluate how they can be scored.
right, so the schedule that they proposed, RH2 proposed, was evaluating and talking to the staff in each department throughout the summer and getting bid ready specs going. If we go to phase 2, probably starting in late summer. The other proposal we interviewed, they would have the bid ready specs done by summer. So they weren't going to incorporate, including all of us, into making that decision. So we felt that what they offered was a better fit for us going down the road. This is just, and I think we may have, I don't want to say jumped the gun on the proposed price or not, but it might have been qualifications, then negotiate the price, because price is supposed to not be negotiated with the qualifications. We put a phase 1 estimate in there and they came out. The price really was not, the other company was really relatively close to the same price for the phase 1. It was just the process that went through was, and plus, RH2's done all our electrical infrastructure out there. TCF, they designed our facility back in 1998. And Forte Architecture, they did the remodeling for the 3rd floor. And
I definitely understand the process. I just want to make sure the outcome won't have been changed by the scope of the work being looked at, having been modified.
no,
I understand prices.
Yeah.
I've done lots of these, I understand the process, so.
right. So no.
My
not on
question's been
part.
answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would just say that, you know, I just voiced a little bit of uncomfortableness. The outcome for me would have been the same. I mean, they're the right firm based on what we need to have happen. So just want to make that clear. It's just a little bit of clumsiness to it, but it's fine. It is more for me, it was about perception, you know.
I totally agree. I mean, and to be honest, I'm not used to even putting down a number on it during that part of the process. Usually this is when we're trying to figure that number out. And so for me, it was even a little bit uncomfortable because I'm trying to throw a number out there without fully knowing where what the scope looks like. And so that's my challenge.
And when the committee was looking at it, it threw me off that there were numbers at all, because that's what I
Yeah,
asked.
it's not
Is this an
numbers.
RFQ or an RFP? And it's an RFQ with numbers, but Link actually asked for some numbers, which is why numbers got thrown at.
I couldn't ignore it.
No, exactly. So I think we determined that on the next RFQ, numbers will not be asked for.
Kyle, do you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't take
Okay,
it.
no
I'm
worries.
sorry.
All right, so we have a motion in a second. I think we've.
And I actually don't think we need this board's already taken the action to award the contract for the quoted issue. The amount, we just need to make sure you're comfortable.
In the
with this.
minutes, though, it said $150,000. So I'd like it to reflect the upper amount for that.
Okay, that's fair. I think that we're not re-awarding the contract. We're just
Can you just do that
clarifying
with
the
the
amount.
amendment?
So this is just the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All those in favor of the amendment? Oh, yeah, but we did make the motion.
I'll make a motion to amend the service contract to reflect the scope of work to $200,000.
I'll second.
Is that what it was?
It's
$199.
really close to that.
$200,000 it is.
Yeah, round it up.
All right, so we have a motion by Kyle, we have a second by Commissioner Straub. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is that the dinner plan? Let's go.
Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone. Staff reports. Lynn, Human Resources Staffing Monthly Report.
We have our monthly staff report for coach operators. We started the month of October off with 82 drivers. We had one quit and we terminated one. So that leaves us with a rostered number of 80. We have 2 that are out on extended absences, and that's 3 less than last month. So that's good. Had some people come back. And 1 that is still in training. So we are up 2 from last month. So we're taking those, you know, when we can get it, we take it. So we have 77 full-time operators that are available for work right now. And that was 75 last month. So we are also just finishing up some video testing for our next class. We're going to be interviewing 4 or 5 candidates on Thursday this week. So we're hopeful about that. And that class should start mid-November. And then the only other position that we have currently open is a training aid position, and we're in the middle of that process. The next step is going to be a presentation that they'll make to us. And then we'll go from there to an interview process, and depending on what position that individual that's successful has, they may or may not start now. If it is a coach operator, we've already connected with all the candidates and told them that we would probably have to push that start date off, and they all understand that. So that's where we're at. Any questions
New recruits? Did you mention that? And then I missed it.
for drivers?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, we're gonna be doing some interviews Thursday this week, 4 or 5 interviews we're trying to set up right now for Thursday.
So just, and like I said, the news is positive. We have feedback. We're a little higher than we were, but even with that, on Monday, we had cut a number of routes because we didn't have enough operators to cover. So we are still having that random cuts. We haven't had to cut more service, but we're right on that knife's edge of being able to continue to operate, even this reduced level.
Yeah, we had people call in sick that.
Yeah,
on Monday.
exactly.
One last question, Lynn. Any of the recruits, are they as a result of the TV ad?
We have had a couple people that have notified us that they saw those ads out of the area, so that's great. I wish there was a whole bunch of people.
Can't really, it's hard to measure though. You don't, it's hard to tell.
Right,
I think
and
they're
if they
very
don't
effective.
tell you or you don't ask, you can't find out. So when we get an opportunity to talk to them, we can get better information. So, but we've had a lot of comments though.
That's good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Monthly financial report, Brenda.
Oh, then you follow.
Okay, hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at them. And I keep waiting for the sales tax to drop, but it's not happening. For the month of September, we received $2,154,083, which is 51.8% over last year and 79.4% over the budget. We can contribute most of that, I think, to construction, and that's 147% over. It's very high. Retail sales is 6%. I think the construction is probably going to carry us for a little while because most of those projects won't be completed for the next several months, a year, maybe year and a half. But overall, all categories are up.
Question on that. Are you subject to tax rebates from data centers like the counties?
Yes.
Yes, and that
We're tracking that.
we established a reserve fund for that purpose alone. So
We
that,
tracked the specific,
Yeah.
one that's Microsoft related and other
yeah, so
components and servers and stuff.
we had actually contacted them, if you remembered, it was sometime last year, to take a look at all of the vendors that were building those to make sure that they were all certified to reduce the sales tax so that we didn't get those huge payments. And she did find a couple and did have them become certified. So hopefully we won't see that huge payback again, but who knows?
Which is why we have this.
Which is wise.
Yeah, we did try to prepare for that one. So for the grants, we are at the end of the quarter. We will be requesting reimbursement for the third quarter of 2022, which is approximately $309,000. Justin will be building the 5307 in December through October, or yes, November through October, and then again after the first of the year for the rest of the year, which is $4,125,476 for that grant. We're 3/4 of the way through the year. Our current budget for September is $16,280,000 with 70% expended, $15,282,000. We're 5% under budget, which is almost $1 million, $998,415. And of course, that is due to drivers. service. Capital budget, we did the bird netting. I'm hoping this is the final figures on it. We did pay out $84,700 this month. The seal coating on the parking lots was $36,270. We purchased 20 Brasco bus shelters, $112,500. Then we had a small amount in professional services, RH2, $12,343. And then Ed got 6 rideshare vehicles, 2 Ford Escapes
You
and
found
4
them.
Honda Odysseys. $242,605. So we can start the program.
You got to drive to Spokane twice.
I was gonna say, did you have to go to different countries to get them?
Spokane, Kirkland, and here.
So our cash accounts, cash is over $5.5 million, almost $5.6 million. Investments are over $2.3 million. Contingency is 1.3. Vehicles, $2,080,000. The small FTA pretty much stays the same. Hopefully we'll get to use that money soon. $17,061, and that is under. Facilities are over $4,787,000, and then the sales tax refund reserve is at $750,000. Our goal is to have 1 million, which we will reach that by the end of the year. So, any questions on that? And all the documentation, of course, is in the back.
And the bird netting is working? Good.
It looks good.
Yes, does it?
It does.
Wonderful.
Birds like it. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Have you gone out and checked it out?
Yeah. Even a pterodactyl.
Thanks, Brenda. Okay, Momentum Dynamics Organization restructure, Richard.
So our contract for our wireless chargers is a company called Momentum Dynamics, and they underwent some internal restructuring here a couple of weeks ago. I just want to let you know about that. So the president and CEO and founder of the company was removed by his board a couple of weeks ago, and that's who we've been working with for most of our contract structure. The interim board chair, CEO, has met with us, came out and met with us personally, and has committed they're going to continue what they've done. But they are restructuring the company, and in some ways that actually may be a benefit. They are emphasizing their commercial heavy-duty vehicle charging infrastructure in the US and reducing their investment they've done in Europe in charging cars. They had an agreement to do wireless charging on Volvos, and they installed a demonstration in Stockholm for a taxi fleet there. And there was I think the board decided that was taking too much resources, and they were not honoring their contracts they had here effectively. So that's going to be a change. I think I've shared with you that this generation of charger, the 4 we have not been trouble-free by any means like they were in the first generation. They have been very good at stepping up to fix things, but we have, so the charge system uses individual plates per bus. There's 4 plates per bus. We have them on 12 vehicles, so that's 44 plates on the vehicles, plus there's 4 in each of the chargers, so there's 16 ground chargers. We have gone through about 80 vehicle plates, and we've gone through about 12 ground plates over the last year and a half with them. They have replaced them. They have almost a permanent staff here in town, keeping them up. And they have been very good about keeping the chargers working to a level that we can meet our routes. Even if they lose one, they're replacing things fast enough that we're able to continue to operate. But that's not a reliability level that we're comfortable with, or they're comfortable with as far as that goes. They've been covering all these costs. They've not hit us for any addition, even though they've spent a bloody fortune making this technology work. Because they put so much money into it and there's exposure, I wanted to be aware there is a change at the top and they're changing how they do things. I don't think it's going to affect us long term, and I'm still pretty optimistic about what we're seeing with the technology. Their real issue is that at this high voltage and high amperage they're running, it's causing micro arcing, which is damaging their plates, because I think my personal opinion is they made them too light. They went from a plate that was 300 pounds per plate to one that's 75 pounds per plate. And so that extends the range of the vehicles, you cut the weight way down, but that also means those coils are a lot closer together than they used to be, and the potential for an arcing, which is what I think the problems actually are, based on what they've told us, is higher. And I think they're working through that, but they have not got the magic sauce exactly where it needs to be yet. It's certainly a lot less than it used to be. We were having horrendous problems a year ago, and now it's not great, but it's not a service issue. We're actually able to operate the routes that we want to operate.
So Richard, are those replacement plates actually physically changing? Are they refining that balance process?
They've redesigned them. We're on, what version are we on now, Ed?
2B.
2B. So we went through 3 versions of one, and now we're on the second version of that plate. And same issue with the ground coils. They've changed them a couple of times. And then there's, they initially thought their problem, and they still think their problem, I think this is actually one of the major reasons they're reorganizing, is they have a real problem in making production consistent. And so they end up, they have to have perfect pores of the insulator, and if they get any micro bubbles in them at all, that will eventually cause a short. And they tried to contract that work out for the last couple of years, and every time they come back, they tell us they're finding micro bubbles that are causing the shorts. It's part of the production process. The ones they hand build haven't failed for us. It's the ones they contracted out that have been a failure. But we've got that many plates. We've got 12 buses. Indianapolis has 36 buses, and they're having the same plate failures. Woods Hole has got another 12 buses with the same number of issues. So they have a huge issue of backlog of trying to make these individual plates, which they sell for $11,000 a piece, and we've gone through a lot of them. You can see there's a real economic issue for the company to fix.
They make it up in volume.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case, there's changes going on. I think it's going to be positive. We have had conversations with the other wireless charging provider as well. But according to BYD, they are just about their failure rates are about the same as Momentum for some of the same issues. They both tried to lighten their plates, and it seems to be they're having the same microfracture issue, micro arcing issues. So we don't see any need to change right now, but there are changes in the company, and once we get the details, we'll sit down with Aaron and make sure our contracts are solid and we're comfortable with where we're going, because sometime in the next year, we're going to need to buy a couple more chargers, and I'm not comfortable buying something until I'm comfortable that they've got this problem resolved.
Just require hand built.
Well, and that may be part of what we have to do, is if they, either or they have to beef up their system and go to a heavier design again, because we need to have it last the life of the vehicle. This should not be changing. We shouldn't be changing plates every month on something that's that expensive.
Because we're just fortunate right now that it's not creating operational issues for us. Otherwise, that would have an intrinsic factor.
That would have a huge issue. And then we also designed our contract to say the warranty didn't start until they met a certain performance standard. They haven't met it yet, so the warranty hasn't kicked in yet. So we're still getting all this for free, and they've agreed with that.
Great, thanks, Richard. We're running out of business.
Yeah, I think that is why the board took action.
Hey, Nick, you're up. Capital projects update.
Okay. Okay, so we've been busy. First off, we'll start off with some of the items, projects we've actually completed. So Alcoa Highway and South Wenatchee Avenue used to look like this. So this is Alcoa Highway heading south towards Alcoa. This is South Wenatchee Avenue.
This is Malaga Highway.
Did I say?
That's pretty called it Alcoa.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The Malaga
You're dating
Highway.
yourself.
That's right, Alcoa is no longer there. South Wenatchee Avenue currently looks like this. We put a 90-degree turn in here, so that our buses could come down Malaga Highway, turn left here, go up through South Wenatchee. Total cost about $170,000.
The first direction of that.
What's that?
They go the other way.
No, they're not.
They'll turn right.
And then go back. Penny Road pedestrian crossing. This is out by Euclid Avenue, out by or Euclid and Penny Road. This is where our operations base. This is a skill center over here. Bus stops on both sides. Very busy bus stop. We have a park and ride right up in this area. We put these flashing beacons in for the evening, for the night time for the crossing. It's really busy up through here, so that's been very helpful. The city was very helpful in helping us get this done. 9th Street. This is 9th Street, Wenatchee Valley College. We took part of their property out where the Apple Sox park, and they allowed us to use that as a bus turnaround. So they'll come in at this west entrance, come up to the bus. We have a bench right here now. We're going to put a shelter in, and they can make a nice turn and head right out this driveway here. So that's completed. New Goodwin Bridge is almost completed. They're waiting for some parts for their push button or their poles for their lighting, the crosswalks right here. As you see, this 4th light over here, that's our Q jump. So that's for buses. If they pull off the side of the bus going inbound towards Wenatchee, they'll have a preemptive light that gives them a little bit of room before the traffic starts. This is the looking outbound towards Leavenworth. Our stop, we'll have a shelter put up here. And that's almost complete. Our cost will be about $215,000. This is the property we're looking at Hay Canyon. This is where the new bridge goes right around like this. And this property is 2.6 acres. We have an appraisal in process right now. They're asking $7 a square foot, so about $792,000. I did find out, I did do a little more research. The county paid at least $7.30 a foot for this section here. So this $7 is right in the ballpark. Once we get the appraisal back, we'll bring it to the board. US 2 and Icicle Road Roundabout. RH2 is designing this. DOT is waiving all its fees, and they're in the review process with RH2. The city of Leavenworth has contributed half of the engineering fees for the design work, and they're paying for all or any artwork they do in the middle of it. We go up to bid next year, and the estimated cost is between $2.5 and $3.5 million. This is very important to our Route 22 to be able to get our bus turnaround here. Currently, as we've talked about, we go through the 76 station. And as you can see at our bus stop right here, there's an RV park, which makes it very difficult to get a 40-foot bus through here. So sometimes we have to go underneath the canopy, which is probably not the safest thing to do. The adventure park, I don't know if you've been up there, right now is being built right up here, and they're just changed that whole look of that mountain.
And that little corner, it actually belongs to Adventure Park, and they dedicated that to this project and their cost.
East Wenatchee Park and Ride, that's 3rd and Rock Island. So East Wenatchee is actually putting a light at this intersection right here. So we're coordinating with them for construction for the light and our park and ride at the same time. The bus will come down 3rd Street, Rock Island, turn in this way, and take a right up back on 3rd Street up here.
So you're opening that ingress egress point up, it's way too small.
What's that?
Off.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. This one here?
Yeah.
They're-
Most
yeah.
residential driveways are wider than that.
Right, yeah, there's
Really
some,
goofy design.
there's some vaults right here that they're gonna relocate. We have a comfort stations right here that we've identified for a restroom break. Right now, we're having a hard time finding restrooms over East Wenatchee. This will satisfy that. We will put a vault in somewhere along this bus route here for charging. And it will be just an empty vault, so we could put a charger in it in the future if we need to.
And this is one of the chargers that we do need to purchase at some point, so our Route 2 can operate without coming back here. It's not intended to come to Columbia Station, so if we can get a charger here, that will make that route work more effectively. But because of these issues, we said, let's not plan for putting it in right now. Let's just put the infrastructure, the conduits involved. And once they work their issues, we'll decide what to put in or not.
Rock Island Park and Ride. So we're working on this. We have not vetted it out completely. This is just a draft. And what we want to do, there's some utilities running down. Is this Cambridge, I believe, street here? Utilities, so we can tap into sewer and water. If we put a comfort station up at this corner. I believe it'd be probably the closest location. Randy's been very helpful working with them to get this developed, and so we'll see how this goes forward. Next year will be in the budget for next year for development.
You've been helpful.
He's being generous.
Trying to score some points here.
When you see the next design, you'll see how helpful. I
North Wenatchee Avenue Bicycle Ped Bridge. So we've looked at that, pursue future grant opportunities. This will have a plan to go forward right now. The bridge is this pink part that goes right across here like this over Town Toyota Center, and it's about $34 million. The tunnel, which is over here, and this is the Value Medical Center right now. They own this lot right here. And the way they have the tunnel going down through here under the tracks. The tunnel will just be under the tracks. It's gonna be the pathway and over to the Town Toyota Center on the south side. And that's about $12 million. And they've included about $500,000 for property acquisition. So
I thought we gave up on that.
The state came back and said that they did not allocate all the funding. They are doing a second call and wanted us to resubmit if we could get a project cost that we were comfortable with. So that's
Like
like
this, Randy. Money.
What a gondola cost? We just do a gondola and we do the ski lift cheaper than that.
I do not have that on my.
That was Dan's idea, by the
I
way.
refuse to put that one on there.
I like it though.
Could I ask a quick question?
You bet.
Just once again to enlighten me, since what does this bicycle pedestrian bridge have anything to do with mass transit?
So the primary issue is we've had for years requests to run service to the Town Toyota Center because they have a lot of big events. The problem is they're events, they're not regular. So running buses over there is probably not the best use of our resources because they're going to be empty much of the time. But if you actually look at from that corner of Wenatchee Avenue and Maple, that's our busiest bus location. We have more buses going past it almost any place else in the city of Wenatchee. And it's really only 900 feet from the TTC. So if you could have a direct connection, you could serve for the transit from there. But the current walk path is more than half a mile to the TTC from that location. So it makes it something where we could leave the buses where they are. We're trading capital for operating expense essentially is the reason it's in our interest to do something. Now, this clearly has huge benefit for the TTC and has huge benefit for the city. And so we'd want to do some partnership with them to do this. If we could get state funding for part of it and get the TTC to contribute to this, that would be part of the deal. I don't think we want to do it on our own. But that's the whole logic is that it's essentially trading an operating cost because we're going to keep getting pressure to serve that event facility. And that's just a tough thing to do in public transit. But if we have this passage, it makes the stops we currently have work for it. And it provides a benefit elsewhere. And so that's the logic that we have going forward.
As a member of the Town Toyota Center Board, also a lot of parking that we used to have is no longer there. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue for people wanting to go to events. And I was one of the ones since day one pushing them to run service. I don't think a regular scheduled service makes any sense. But I thought they could do shuttles, but apparently that's not in our purview.
It's technically, it's against federal law and it's considered charter and it's explicitly the only thing we can't do under state law is charter service.
Thanks, Richard.
Okay, I think we've talked about this enough. So we redesign. We do have a $300,000 grant, green transportation grant for electrical infrastructure, the engineering portion of that. So any of the costs going up to bid ready specs, if we get it done by June of next year, June 30th, we can charge it to the grant. So that's money in our pocket. North Wenatchee Avenue, Maiden Lane, we're working with the city of Wenatchee on this. This was an old draft, and what they want to do is phase it in because they had, I believe, $23 million for the roundabout at Easy Street and fixing this North Wenatchee Avenue. They have $16 million and a little change left to do this. This portion over here will take all that plus a little bit more to do the phase one, which it does not give us a southbound or an inbound bus stop. So we've just contracted again with KPG to have them relook at it, probably taking this bypass road out and putting 2 bus stops in for the $16.3 million that's left. So our contribution is about $22,000 towards that study to review this again. So we'll see if we can
So just for reference value, for those of you that weren't on the board, the city asked us to contribute to the environmental cost of Confluence Parkway, which we put several hundred thousand, 250,000 into that effort. Pardon? 400, okay, 450. I mean, it was a lot of money. But I asked, one of the commitments they made to this board was that we would get transit improvements at Maiden Lane. Well, when this plan came out, our transit improvements weren't in it. So I've been screaming at them for 2 years to say, you made a promise to our board that we were going to have the transit improvements at Maiden Lane. You cannot say it's in the second phase, which has no money. That's never going to get built. You have to put it in the first phase, and you got to redesign the damn project, do what you said, because that was the commitment you made to the board. And that's what we're trying to push. The other part of this is the cost of this has gone through the roof, and they can't possibly build it. And so we've been saying, look, you have 16.83 million to spend. It has to be spent in the next 2 years, or you lose it. Let's get a project that we actually can build.
Why are we contributing to something they already promised us to reevaluate?
Well, this is the sort of design of what we need, and we've tried to keep our participation low. It's really just an engineering issue, and if we get the improvement that we want, it'll be worth the cost of it. But I want you to be aware that that's part of why we're doing this, is that they took out our project, and I got, I made this a huge issue with the city, and
So did I.
So, and I know you did, and so does Frank, and they told us that, no, we're gonna do this. The city has come back, and the leadership has said, the transit improvements are going to be in this. It's amazing how every time we sit down with them that they disappear again, and we have to keep pushing the fight on it, but Public Works and us have a different opinion on what the answers are here.
So what the idea is to take that turn lane going up to Maiden Lane currently and having that as a bus lane with a queue jump right at this intersection. So we can stop kind of, it would be a mid-block or a mid-intersection stop with a.
The intersection becomes more of a 90 than the
right
acute angle that it is now.
And with a bus stop kind of in the middle here with a queue jump that allows us to pull ahead of the traffic. Because otherwise, right now, what we're doing, our bus stops right around here, we stop traffic, and that's not good for anybody right now. So we're really trying to get our bus off the road.
So I wanted to share that's been part of the issue. And mainly the any contributions are just like, make sure this gets done. We don't lose that money, and that money is critical to actually Confluence Parkway as well. If we lose that 16 million, we don't have a match that was promised for Confluence Parkway. So this links to a bunch of other projects that all have to get done pretty quickly to get Confluence, which is also very important to us. So
who keeps dropping the transit improvements?
Rather not say.
Fair enough.
The CAD is on.
Okay.
Okay, moving along. Easy Street Roundabout. So this was supposed to be constructed this year. It was pushed back due to road maintenance, and now it's going to be constructed in 2023. We have 2 bus pullouts, one on the north side, one on the south side. Our cost for those 2 bus pullouts and a couple lights is about $167,000, and we're contracting with the DOT to do that. Other projects we're working with the city Wenatchee with, so possible flashing crosswalk signs at Euclid and Gun Road. So this is Euclid Street. Our facility is right up here in this corner. We have 2 bus stops. This is right outside the DOT buildings, right off to the right. This one's Smelts right behind it. These are very well used, and they're not lit. And so there's a light down here, and there's a light up here, further up here. So we're working with them to see if we can get a mid-block crossing with some kind of rapid flashing beacons. Eric Howe from RH2 has given us some ideas that they even actually have street lights on the flashing beacon, so that would help. So that's a possibility. So working with them.
The primary access for remote workers off our system.
Well, this is one of the locations.
Yeah.
The main locations further down that street there. This is Crawford and Okanagan Street, and we actually come up here, I believe, Christina, right, and turn left, which causes a lot of problem as you've been driving around Crawford Street. You know that it's very busy, so that we'd like to potentially put a roundabout here. They have it in their plans. They just don't have it funded. They do have a roundabout going in down on, is it Met Howe? Yeah, Met Howe and Crawford next year down here. So this is something that we're just working with them to see if there's any way we can help out or contribute to it. Leffler Field Park and Ride in Manson. So this is his property that Manson School District or Manson City or School District owns. And they're going to be putting a park and ride, bus turnaround, layover restrooms, and a bunch of different amenities for the city of Madison or this area. So they've asked us to help out and be a partner and put a parking ride and maybe a charging facility up there. Because right now we go up here, we turn around. I don't know the street names very well, but we get stuck up here.
Bedoy Street.
Bedoy Street. And they park at our bus stop, and this is a layover for them or a restroom break, and we have no place to go. So this would be a very good fix. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be about 5 years out before it's ready for construction. Because they're looking for money actually right now.
It's for us, if we can make this deal work in an effective fashion, we know what land prices are in Chelan Valley. So a location to actually put a parking right that happens to be at the end of the route was a huge win. When Commissioner Gearing called and said, would you be interested? I jumped out of my seat saying, yes, we'd be very interested in this. This solves a major problem for us if we can get it together.
Empire Avenue Roundabout. This is going across the Otabashan Bridge. This is Empire Street here. We're participating in a study with the DOT and I think Douglas County, I'm not sure, for a roundabout right here and to see if we can access these areas here since they're building out this north end of Douglas County.
Yeah, this solves a safety problem for us on Sunset if we can get it done. And again, it's sort of one of these things that should probably happen eventually, but it's not going to happen anytime soon unless we can accelerate the push.
So the last thing is a lot of these changes are a result of our service change. And I just wanted to reiterate that this was years of outreach, this big service change we did. And once we got the outreach information, we hired Nelson Nygaard, but they did more outreach. Our planning department did a great job putting this plan together. It was a big job redesigning all the routes. The facility maintenance job, they did a big job in changing all the signs out and putting everything together, the stops and the kiosks. We've had a real hard time finding enough operators to do the service change that we wanted to do, and by reducing the service levels that we have actually taken away some of our connectivity or some of our frequency. But I just think it's important that we all acknowledge that this was a change that we did. It was part of all what we did as a team effort. And for the coach operators to be out there on a daily basis, answering questions, making sure that everyone gets to the place, the destination they're trying to get to, and working through these changes, it's been a lot of work for them. And I know that sometimes planning gets the brunt of it because it's their plan. Well, it's not their plan, it's our plan that we felt we got from the people that answered the questionnaires. So I just want to say that the staff did a great job with it and that we're fighting through. I'm going to make this thing as good as we can. So that's all I got.
Actually, a lot of progress and a lot more pieces out there yet to get done. So nice changes that will make some improvements.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, system performance and followed by your general manager's report.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so on our fixed route, our average weekday ridership was 3,202 per day in September. That's up 1.6% over last month, up 16.3% over last year, but that's down 17.7% from pre-pandemic levels. And what we see here is, again, the same, about 15% that we have not recovered from the pandemic. Most of that is college ridership because the college had not gone back to in-person classes. Now they are apparently next semester going back to in-person. So there is a a significant chance we'll start seeing some recovery of that. Of course, we have cut service to the college a lot since we weren't carrying a lot of people there. So they've actually approached us saying, are you going to restore some of the services you cut to the college, since we're going to go back in person, we used to carry a lot of people there. So that's an issue to be aware of. And that's really dependent on how many operators we can get.
Could I ask one question? So when we talk about boardings, are we just talking individual boardings, not necessarily, I mean, it could be one individual with 2 boardings on to and from?
Yes, it's every time they cross the door, there's a sensor that counts how many deep, the number of legs that get on the bus and divides by 2. So technically how it works, but yeah, it's every time they board, and that's the traditional measure you use in training.
Okay, thank you.
Is the college going to start a class for training bus drivers? I would make our delivery service conditioned upon that.
We actually talked about changing our standards and approaching high school for discovered we can hire younger people than we have in the past, and we think we have a great career opportunity for folks. So we will reach out there and see if we can generate some additional projects. On Saturdays, our ridership was an average of 1,648 boardings. That's down 3.8% over last month, up 23.9% over last year, and up 11.5% over the pre-pandemic levels. And we expanded Saturday service in 2020, and we're seeing the result of that expansion. We're getting more ridership on Saturdays. On Sunday, our average was 1,065. That's up 2.1% over last month, up 32.6% over last year, and up 68.8% over 2020. Now, we started Sunday service in 2020, so I don't have a pre-pandemic number for this, but just showing where things are going on Sundays. And again, our Sunday service is about half of what we operate on Saturdays. We're carrying 3/4 of what we carry on Saturday and Sundays. Sunday is actually our busiest day of service. We carry more people per bus on Sunday than we do any other time. In fact, we need more service on Sunday based on the ridership. We have separated out for the first time our DART service, which is our general public dial ride, which we really are focusing in Cheyenne Valley. It's turned out to be very effective, much more even than I expected. DART is up, was averaged 1,304 boardings over the month. That's up 10% from last month, up 36% over last year, and up 125% over the pre-pandemic levels of service. This keeps generating more trips and meeting a whole new set of needs. So it's been an effective tool. Once we get enough operators, our intention is to expand this to Leavenworth. We have a DART, but it doesn't have the same policies we operate in the Cheyenne Valley. We don't do same day trips in Leavenworth, and the intention is to go same day there as soon as we have enough operators to do that, because this is a very effective way of serving those outlying rural communities. On-time performance was 89%. That is the lowest I've seen it in 21 years on the system. On-time performance numbers are being driven by construction and by traffic congestion. Is really becoming a big issue for us, and that's not a great place to be. It's not uncommon in urban areas, but it has been driving down from our 94% goal, and we used to be able to hold to that, and we're just not seeing that anymore.
Where's the priority of the congestion?
Well, there's 2 parts of this. Part of this is congestion and causing problems. The other part is timing of our routes. And because we've redesigned all our routes, if we don't give enough time for the operator to do the run, then they're going to be late every time they come in. And that's part of this issue, is that we need to do some refining on timing. But part of that is that they were timed based on what the roads used to run. And it's becoming a challenge sometimes to be able to get them through in the time. So we have to add more time into the runs to keep them on time. And that's part of the problem. So we can solve about half of this, about half of its congestion we're not going to be able to solve. And
Plus, virtually every road in Wenatchee was being repaved.
They'd like to do that.
So there was lots of reroutes.
Block every possible pathway.
Yeah.
I said that this is something I've never seen it this low for us. Now, on-time performance in Los Angeles when I left was at 51%, so 89% is still pretty darn good. Preventable collisions was 0 for the month. That's down 400%. So it was a good month. Has not been a good year, but it was a good month. Complaints we had 3 for the month. That's down 300% from last month, equal to last year, and down 66% from pre-pandemic levels. And so that's 3 complaints out of 89,000 boardings. So that's a really low level of complaints. Link Plus ridership. So this is our disabled passenger ridership. Average 209 boardings for the month, and this is excluding the DART service. So we separated that back out to give you a better sense of what these are. It's up 7.7% from last month, up 20.8% from last year. It's up 11.8% from pre-pandemic levels, which making this free and taking in for the disabled population, having it only go up 11, I think is a win. We were expecting more than that. And I think this is we're achieving what we wanted to achieve. So I'm pretty happy with those numbers. On Saturday, averaged 106 boardings. That's up 3.9% from last month, up 27.7% from last year, up 34% from 2019. And while that number is a lot bigger, we also dramatically expanded where we operate on Sunday, Saturdays, and expanded the hours. So paratransit has to match the hours and days of service. So we have more places people can go, so more people are riding. So again, I don't think that's a problem. On Sunday, we averaged 83 Link Plus boardings. That's up 12.1% from last month, up 93% over last year, and up 277% over 2020. Again, we didn't have any service in 2019. So part of this is growth because we didn't have any service. So ridership is developing because it's new service, but it's also it is slowing down in its growth numbers to where probably appropriate. So the same issue, we don't have as much Sunday service because we don't have as much fixed route on Sunday. We don't go as many places. We don't serve a lot of the rural communities on Sunday. So once we finally get all the Sunday expansion done, get enough people hired to do that, this number will go up again. On-time performance was 96%. It's down 1% from last month. It's still exceedingly good. To be above 94 in paratransit is considered exceptional, and we've always been in an exceptional category on on-time performance. Average weekday service hours is 479 for the month. That's up 0.02% from last month, up 3% from last year, up 12.7% from pre-pandemic levels of service. And again, most of that in paratransit. On Saturday, 230 daily service hours. That's down 1.8% from last month, up 3.1% from last year, up 61% from 2019. And you can see it's fairly stable. And again, what varies in service hours is paratransit. Fixed route hours are the same month to month. And then on Sunday, our average was 158 hours, down 2.5% from last month, up 20% from last year, up 48% from 2020. So you can see the ridership is growing a lot faster than the hours have, which is exactly the trend you want to see in new services, that you're generating more than you're putting out in terms of resources. That pattern won't continue forever, but right now it's been very positive. Let's see, miles between road calls. Average between road calls is 24,978. That's an improvement by 35% from last month, down 6% from last year, up 171% from 2019, when we had a lot older vehicles in the fleet and we're having a lot more maintenance issues with them. So that's actually really good. And then cost per hour was $166.86. That's quite a bit above the goal, but as I keep trying to remind people, this is a spot in time. And so like this month, we had that seal coating of our parking rides, which was not something we capitalized because it's an operating expense, but it all hit in the same month. So it drove that number up. And there's a few other one-time things that do that. On average, our cost per hour is $147.23, which is still $1.45 below the goal for the year. So I think we're doing fine. We're going to see these blips. If they continue, that'd be a thing to be worried about, but we're not seeing that. So,
Richard, how is TripLink doing? What kind of performance are we seeing on that, or how's it being received?
I mean, my sense of it is it's being received very positively. Ridership is not as strong as I would hope. I think we were talking this morning about TripLink, and potentially the opportunity to expand it, since it doesn't require drivers. It's a place that maybe we put some more resources towards it. And we're looking at perhaps expanding the eligibility to make it more general public in the rural areas so that more people can take advantage of it.
We've had a lot of interest in it in the plain area, so that's something we talked about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, since we're going to be pursuing that. But I think that I think people are starting to understand it's available, and so we're hoping to see more success.
We had hoped we would spend about 75,000 in total costs, for about a third of that thing has been spent so far. So we're not quite where we want to be with it, but it is growing and it's got a very
Great
positive
concept.
response.
I think it has every opportunity in a good option for it.
Yeah, I think that in our van pool program, the rideshare program, as we get that up and running, now that we have vehicles, that we should see some really positive things on those non-traditional services. And then Christina's got some meetings scheduled with some other non-traditional providers, trying to bring some other options and see how we can get more service out in this environment where it's just so hard to do it the traditional ways.
Richard, now that you've got the vehicles, when do you think the van pool program will?
We're targeting beginning of December. That's our, yeah. So just have a few kind of loose ends to tie up in terms of like, how does the payment work, getting stuff online, but yeah, we're working through that internally.
Vehicles are getting logoed and ready for service. So I think we're ready, we're moving, and that's all really positive.
You want to go right into your general manager's report?
Don't have much on that because I hadn't been here much this last month. So I was out in Australia, and I did get to ride the train in Melbourne and the buses in Perth, but also spent a long time in the outback, swatting flies out of my face. Nothing. If you've never been to the outback, you've never seen flies like they have there. It's just, my wife's got a picture of me with. You can't see me because I'm black, covered in flies. It's just astounding how the flies there are. It's a unique experience.
Are they biting flies?
No, they're looking for moisture. So any place where they sweat or anything else, they just, it's astounding. We were stuck we got stuck in floods, and we couldn't leave for 3.5 days in the town of Whitewater, which is a town of 200 people. 6.5 hours to the nearest other place in any place. And so we really got to know the locals and all the 6 buildings in town, and ran out of food, ran out of fuel, and it was a great time.
Yes, Mark.
I had a question, actually prompted by Mr. Corbin's presentation. Probably should have asked this from legal counsel this year, but it doesn't deserve a long debate, so maybe 79 words or less. But when I'm looking at the parking ride at Cashmere and Rock Island, when the recreational vehicles and cars show up there on Link's property, does Link have the right to how do we trespass people? Because we're a public agency and
we have the ability, we have a policy.
Doesn't have a law for towing like say Wenatchee has. How does that work?
We've been able to manage those fairly effectively. It's been a challenge, particularly if someone doesn't, we had a vehicle abandoned in Chelan one time at the park and ride, and got into a long debate between the city and us of whose responsibility it was. The police have treated us as a private owner, particularly out here, because BN technically owns our park and ride. So they actually are allowed to tow out of that property. And they've treated us like a private entity in most cases. So we've been able to effectively enforce most of the rules. Our staff is really good about identifying people who are camping and trying to inappropriately occupy and getting to them right away. And most of them have been pretty good about just moving.
What happens if they don't?
That's more complicated.
Or what happens if a legal advocacy group steps in? And does it happen to other transit agencies in the state?
Yeah, it has generally, because the park and rides are defined under state law, what the requirements are, you can have reasonable limits. And it's a fascinating conflict because we're also required to make them available for airport shuttles. So there's a legitimate reason for people to leave a car there for 2 or 3 weeks. And as long as they notify us, we can't tow it. So how do we deal with a car that's abandoned or not abandoned, but just not operable? I mean, they came in a couple months ago and there was a van in the parking lot out here that the engine was pulled out in front of it and they were rebuilding it in the parking lot, which was astounding because it wasn't there the night before. And I was pretty amazed they got that engine out that fast.
I
But,
hate when I have to do that when my car won't start yet.
But, that is an issue. We had an abandoned car that, the plates had been taken off and it was clearly abandoned. And we were able to get it towed out pretty easily, again, because it's considered a private lot. So I think we've been lucky in some degree. We did have a pushback at our facility in Old Station about 5 or 6 years ago on this issue. The guy gave up because we were just persistent, I think, more than anything else. So I am concerned about it. We've got a lot of parking out there. There's a real potential for this to be a problem, but so far we've been able to manage it very effectively.
Ed, you had a comment?
So to comment to that, like Third and Rock Island Road, we had an abandoned motorhome. Motorhomes are hard to tow. So I posted it, we have everything posted for 24 hours, and actually Third and Rock Island Road has no RVs posted all over it.
That one's owned by the city.
No, it's owned by us now.
Lake owns it now, okay.
So the I had city police out basically, and Randy's towing will tell you this. We had it towed. And basically what happens is if the owner comes and claims it from Randy's bills me for the tow. If it's a motorhome, no matter what, even if they don't claim it, Randy's bills me for the tow and the disposal. If they don't claim it. Which is that's what happened with the one that got left there.
Not worth it.
Yes. As opposed to leaving it there because they were never going to get it. So, yes, we end up paying for the tow, no matter what, but they have every right to just go get it. I post them, usually they leave, but we post them with a notice of 24 hours, no parking. That particular lot, I posted the heck out of it for no RVs at any time. Only had one ever get in there, and I spent an afternoon with him getting him moved. All the other ones are 24-hour parking. I've been through it with legal counsel, and we are considered a private entity. So we can tow out of anything that we own for trespass. It's hard. One of the best things I think we did was Leavenworth putting in there for at least the winter at the Welcoming was putting up signs of there's no parking out between X hour and X hour, vehicles will be towed. Technically it's 24 hours. Doesn't work. But it seemed to really work up there. I don't know why, but it seemed to work.
Well, our problem there was KOA was charging for extra vehicles, so people were dumping their extra vehicles in our parking lot and camping in the campground. And so by saying they couldn't park there overnight, people didn't want to take the risk of getting a vehicle towed or taken. So we got that problem. That wasn't the homeless issue, but it was dealing with
That was a plow issue.
It's the same as the parking lot down here.
Yeah.
That's everyone working up here. It's parking more than 3 hours.
Well, that's gonna, and that's.
Does Link have an arrangement or agree with the city of Wenatchee to do traffic parking enforcement?
We have an agreement, but we cannot do anything with it. The police say they cannot enforce anything on that property because it is technically owned by BN. We would need to get BN to agree to whatever the terms are.
Right. The Schlam PUD contracts with the city for parking enforcement.
Yeah, so we're actually, I mean, one of the tasks that's not on Nick's list yet is at some point we're going to have to put some sort of access control because with the city taking out Kid Pass lot, it's 100 parking spaces a block and a half a year. This lot's going to be coming. Only 8 years. Well, on certain days there's more than that, but like I said, this lot is, it's not consistent. It's not a problem yet, but I do see this.
We're over 7 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before I adjourn the meeting? Hearing none, this meeting's adjourned.
Excellent.
Hey, you think-